Hello everyone, it's Raleigh, and with Secrets of the Obscure having released and me having played through it with you guys on stream, I thought it would be nice to kind of summarize my thoughts. This is not a review per se, but just a way to give you guys my impressions on what I think of the expansion so far. Obviously, there will be spoilers ahead, and I just want to remind everyone that the expansion hasn't even fully released yet. We have about 3 more releases coming, after which I might come back to this subject and give you guys a full impression on the entirety of the expansion. But with all that out of the way, let's just go through some different categories here. We start with the obvious one, the story and characters. As someone that loves the lore and the world of the Guild Wars universe, and that has mainly focused on that as well as the story and characters for most of my videos, I have to say I really enjoyed the story. Not only do we finally get to be free of the dragon story, but we're also going with a high fantasy / demon story to boot, which is just awesome. I really think the story feels like a huge sigh of relief from the developers to not have to bind characters to the rails of the dragon story. It's so refreshing and opens up a lot of really cool possibilities. The new characters are great, and while they might not be fully fleshed out yet, it just feels nice to be away from Dragon's Watch and co. Yes, I did say that I enjoy the characters in the story, but it really feels like ArenaNet was struggling with milking both the Dragon story and the characters of Dragon's Watch dry over the last few years, and I think it really was time for something new. This also gave ArenaNet the ability to explore deeper into the universe of Guild Wars. We got so many answers to a lot of existing mysteries, while also creating new interesting lore threads that we could potentially explore later. If you ask me what my favorite part of the story was, I would probably say Mabon and Isgarin. Why not just one of the two? Well, because having both a seer and a Mersad from the same time period, giving us answers to questions that have persisted in the community for so many years is amazing. While I do like having Zoja back, and her journey and growth is great to see, I've always been a fan of finding out more about the Elder Races. I also like that each character that was introduced had their own distinct personality and story, and it feels really good exploring the maps and reading different journals and letters to deepen these characters. Earthshake and Gladium quickly became probably the most liked characters in the expansion with good reason. Earthshake is just adorable to listen to, and Gladium really balances the team out. Froda's a Norn character that actually feels like a Norn, and Yuno is exactly how I would imagine some old Asura from Marasum to act. Also, having Galrath in the story is great, since he was one of the few characters in Guild Wars 1 that was interested in the Wizard's Tower. Finally getting some answers as to what happened to him after we kill him is really awesome, and just another reason why this expansion is so great in that regard. One character that I do not fully grasp is Dagda. I guess you could call me ignorant or not well versed in what it takes to write a compelling character, but Dagda is partly a really irritating character to me. So why is that? Well, Dagda is supposed to be this mother hen type character to all of the Astra Ward. She's overly protective and sometimes a little harsh, but she does it all out of love for her family. So far so good, but then we get introduced to her and she instantly does not like us, but this doesn't make sense to me. Everyone in the Astra Ward knows everything about our entire journey, so she should know that we always had the best interest at heart for our friends and guild members. We have tried to keep everyone safe, and especially Bram, who we had to help out numerous times because of his childish and selfish behavior. So why does Dagda dislike us right from the get-go? We essentially take the same role in Dragon's Watch as she does in the Astra Ward. We're always the ones to take care of everyone and help them out with whatever issues. So why does she dislike us so much right from the start? She knows our entire journey and knows everything we've ever done. So it's a little jarring to see this character dislike us, which is probably just her being protective over her family, but we are the one person she really shouldn't be acting like that towards. It would make more sense for her to act this way if she didn't know anything about us at all. I do like her character, I just wasn't fond of how our meeting went, and that we pretty much had to sit there and do a bunch of impressive things to show that we're a good guy. Something we have done for the last 11 years as well, but I guess those didn't count because it had nothing to do with the Astra Ward. Again, perhaps I don't know what it takes to make a compelling character, but that interaction just didn't sit right with me. Another gripe I have with the story is how Mabon was handled. Having this character that is the opposite of everything we've ever known about his race be killed off in the story is really sad to see. Fortunately, we do get a little bit more background through interacting with other characters as well as different achievements. I'm also very interested in where they will take Peitha as a character going forward. I hope they will flesh her out more in the coming releases, and maybe she can give us even more information on the Cryptas as a faction. Speaking of Cryptas, ArenaNet didn't give us much in terms of fleshing them out either. We learn about Petha, Ceres, Deimos, and Eparch, but we have yet to see how organized they really are, how the houses are structured, and even what the realm of dreams, Naios, looks like outside the Temple of Thebe. I can't wait to get to interact more closely with the Cryptus, and perhaps gain more allies in the fight against Eparch, which I think ArenaNet did a really good job of setting up so far. Or what about Waiting Sorrow, the Coden wizard who created the Heart of the Obscure? We know next to nothing about her and the Heart, but she's definitely a character that we could see return in the upcoming releases. So as you can see, there's still a lot more to discover and talk about, which is fantastic. There's so many small details in this expansion, and answers to things I'd never thought I actually wanted to know, like Turai Asa's drive to ascension, among others. But it goes to show that this expansion has done a really good job of expanding on the world as a whole, while adding new and interesting characters along the way. What was your favorite part of the story? Let me know down below. Next up, let's talk about the maps. We essentially got 3 maps, but one of them is the Wizard's Tower, and is more of a hub rather than a standalone map. Nonetheless, there's a lot to see in the tower, as well as characters to talk to and adventures to complete. Let's go through each map to see what I think about each one. First up is the Skywatch Archipelago. I really enjoy this map. Yes, obviously most of the things here are reused assets. This becomes apparent real quick, but that doesn't take away from what we're actually getting here. Each fractal is a different scenario, or what-ifs, that were created by the Wizard's Court to see different outcomes. It's amazing to see. For example, the Zaician Order was brutally underused in the Path of Fire expansion, so seeing them now from a contrasting perspective is a good use of the reused assets. Or seeing Daldrimor dwarves that are not stone and fighting for their survival in the last outpost against the Stone Summit is a great treat for anyone that enjoyed the story of Guild Wars Prophecies. I think the reuse of assets here is done in a smart way. We didn't just get floating islands that are just pieces of our world floating up here, but it's different scenarios with different outcomes and people. There are also a ton of events. I will get back to that later. I will just say there's a lot of variety, and that keeps the map very fresh. Not only do we have varied environments, but also varied events as well. Probably my biggest issue with the map is the meta event. While it is fun and challenging, it misses a certain pizzazz. There is no big bad, no named enemy that has some cool one-liners that makes you want to punch his head in. Instead, we get dialogue between Mabon and Lear. Again, it's not bad, but it just feels like any other event and not a true meta event. But it is nice to have a variety. Then we travel to the Wizard's Tower. The southern half of it is only explorable in an instance, which is kind of a shame, but when we do get to the northern half, there is a lot to see. There's so many cool interactions and sights. Of course, every character that was introduced so far can be spoken to, but there is a ton of ambient dialogue, notes, and items around to really flesh out what the Wizard's Tower is truly all about. We see refugees of the different fractals there, a couple of adventures to do, and there are little windows with dioramas of sorts, which are just fun. I spend a lot of time exploring every nook and cranny, and even now, there are still so many mysteries in the tower that are unexplained. Whether this is something that I'm able to still find out about, or something that will just remain unexplained, is unknown, but it adds a certain depth to the meaning behind the tower and its stories from throughout the Guild Wars history. Each wizard has their own unique styled room as well, adding to the feeling of this being their home, and gives them each even more character depth, like Iskarin having a statue of a Forgotten, which is actually Vass, one of the earlier wizards who Iskarin was courting. It again deepens the story and depth of the wizards and their journey. Further north we have Amnitas. This map is probably the biggest disappointment that I have with this entire expansion. While yes, the map is big and there's a lot of information on characters and lore, so many areas just feel wasted and empty. It's a shame really, since the archipelago is so full of content and events, but Amnitas is not. Yes, there are many events around. Unfortunately, I found myself trying to avoid a lot of them because many of them had a very samey feel to them. When we were first shown Amnitas, I believed that the only area we saw was the Bastion of the Natural. There were lots of trees and a lake, making it feel like a true bastion where the Astroward studies nature. My expectation was that the other bastions would be designed more around their theme. While yes, the Bastion of Strength has areas with Rift Hunters training, and the Bastion of Knowledge has a museum with a lot of cool info on things in the world, every bastion looks essentially the same. I think I would have preferred it if we didn't get to see as much greenery in places like the Bastion of Strength and the Bastion of the Obscure. I've always been hugely impressed by ArenaNet's map designers, but this map feels like it fell a little short on the design part. You could potentially mix up the names of the different bastions, and I would probably be none the wiser, just simply because none of them have unique designs that speak to what each of them are all about. I also think that even the areas that have certain touches feel a little meh, and I found myself questioning why they were even added. The Bastion of the Obscure, for example, has a set of dark corridors where you can encounter demons. You think we would be able to find some crazy scary stuff as you venture around, but it really has nothing of interest in it. What was the point of having it there? Or half of the Bastion of Strength is taken over by Kryptos. Nothing wrong with that, it has varied events and some ambient dialogue, but then around the corner you can find Astor Ward just fishing in a pond. It really feels out of place. The entire time in the story, they made a huge deal over the Astor Ward holding the Kryptos at bay at the Bastion of Strength, and then you come across this tranquil pond right around the corner with people just chilling out. It's a bit jarring, to be honest. But overall, it is a big map and lots to see, and the events aren't as bad as I make them out to be. We also get introduced to even more cool characters, like Sizzle, who I really enjoy. The meta event is also really good. It gives a good look into a huge monster from Nyos, and that makes me want to travel there even more. It's really fun to travel around, doing different events, and I think overall the map isn't too bad. But there is untapped potential here that could have made it even better. Which map did you enjoy the most? Alright, so I wanted to make events its own category, because there are some specifics I want to talk about. One of the biggest issues I had with End of Dragons was the lack of variety of events. Most events throughout Cantha are pretty much just kill this enemy group. There was variety as to how and where they occurred, but in the end they boiled down to just killing a group of enemies. Another issue I had was that a lot of events couldn't be soloed. For example, one of the more interesting events was the Naga event chain in Saitong province, where you ended up having to stand in an area without getting knocked out. But most interesting events ended up with a strong champion at the end, and it just didn't feel important enough to wait for more people to arrive to help fell these champions. I think that's where Secrets of the Obscure did better. We have a ton of variety of events, from collecting items to talking to different people and choosing the right dialogue option, escort missions, rescuing villagers, fighting floating turrets, preparing magical concoctions and spells, etc, etc. It feels really good being able to do so many different things. It keeps everything much fresher. Also, most of them are soloable, since the boss that usually spawns at the end is an elite and not a champion. Now, I don't know if this changes with scaling and we actually do get champions with enough players, but nonetheless, it's good seeing this variety. The meta event of Omnitas is also interesting as it has many different parts that make you move around the world Spire, and it's all very engaging. I think probably the worst part here are the rifts. While I haven't done too many of these, they already seem to be pretty bland. I also find having to have crafted items in order to even do some of them to be a chore, and it just limits the engagement. Let me tell you about something that happened on my second day of playing. Mind you, this was on the second day, so people hadn't really gotten into crafting motivations for the rifts yet. So, next to Garenhof, a rift spawned. About 3 or 4 of us went and killed all the Kryptos around in order to activate the rift. But it was a tier 2 rift. None of us had the item needed. So we stared at it for a while and just left. I can't do the content that is happening because I didn't go and craft some random item. I'm not a fan of crafting at all, but now I'm forced to do crafting because I don't want to have to rely on random people around the map to have the items that I need. I also have to craft the items on my main crafter and then move them to the inventory of the character I want to go rift hunting with. It feels so tedious, clunky, and sucks the enjoyment right out of it for me. While yes, it is nice to have interacting systems of the game and having crafting be a bigger component of the game to engage with newer content, it feels dumb having to move items between characters. I think it was mentioned somewhere that the essences are supposed to be part of the currency, and that it's a bug that they're not, but I can only implore ArenaNet to do the same with the motivations. Having these be part of the currency tab so I don't have to move them around would just make things so much easier to actually enjoy the content. Nonetheless, I hope the rift mechanic gets expanded on later down the road, as it really is just another kill this group of enemy event. ArenaNet has shown that they can create many varied events, so I think the Rift events need to become more engaging if this is going to be a big part of the rewards and content going forward. Let us collect different items to throw back into the Rift, or have us move to different smaller circles to close the Rift rather than just sitting in front of it to close it. Maybe make the Tentacles event more varied, like having them move around and appear in other places within the event area. Just stuff to keep us moving, rather than just sit there and press 1 as we mow down the enemies. Again, I don't know if this is all valid feedback, as I haven't done a lot of rift hunting yet, but this is pretty much just my impression after having played for a few days. Let me know what you guys think they could do to improve on this system, or what you would like to see in the future of Secrets of the Obscure. So next up we get post-story content. While yes, you can do some of these achievements before you finish the story, I'd like to think they're here mostly to do after the story to keep the player base engaged in the content and to give us more background on characters and the different maps that we can traverse. Honestly, I think they did a really nice job here. There are a ton of different achievements and collections to do, and a lot of them reward you with really cool stuff. More on rewards later, but so many achievements were fairly quick and fun to do, and a lot of them gave you more background and not just in text dump form, but actual conversations like Mabon's journal and such. While yes, some achievements require you to just go back and do events you have probably already done on your journey through the maps, these don't really feel tedious because the events are varied enough to not feel like I'm just slaughtering thousands of cryptas. I've pretty much just casually played the game and done random events and rifts throughout the maps, and in doing so I've been completing various parts of collections and achievements. Not much else to say, but I think they did a better job here than they have done in the past. Alright, so I'm not well versed in things like instance endgame PvE. I don't do strikes or raids really that often and have fallen out of doing fractals nowadays too, but I did do both strikes and the Temple of Febe twice. I think they're really well designed. While the Cosmic Observatory is a little easier, and some of the mechanics can just be ignored and powered through, the Temple of Febe feels a bit more punishing, and you actually have to pay attention to what's happening. I didn't encounter any instant death mechanics, which are some of my least favorite, and most of the mechanics are easy to understand and just take some communication and teamwork to work through, which felt nice. I like them both. Again, I don't do much endgame PvE, and I doubt there's anything revelating that I could say. My only hope is that with the challenge modes coming, people will be satisfied with the challenge presented and we get some cool rewards. I'll get to rewards in a little bit though. Let's talk about the different systems that were added. I put rifts with the events already and have given you guys my thoughts on that. But what about the Wizard's Vault, the Weapon Master Training, Relics, and new Skyscale Masteries? Let's start with the Vault. I absolutely love the addition of this system. Is it perfect? Far from it, to be honest, but that isn't the point here. I think adding a system that they can expand on and make changes to is really nice. I felt the old daily and login systems were really outdated and kinda lame. I really enjoyed this new system. It does need some serious improvements though. As of writing the script, we just had an announcement of ArenaNet adding another choice for a daily, as you were forced to do 3 specific dailies to get your daily reward. Now we get a 4th choice that should ease the use of this system. Also, selecting between PvE, PvP, and World vs. World feels really clunky and needs to see some serious revision, as well as some of the UI choices. Currently, it feels like it was designed as an in-game cash shop. At least the layout feels that way. The panels are too large and they're all over the place. The top row of scrollable items is also too big and feels a bit random. But all of this can be fixed. Like I said before, the expansion hasn't fully released yet, and that means ArenaNet can still change these things. More on that later as well. What I will say though is that it's nice to be able to acquire exclusive mount, armor, and weapon skins through the vault. It's a great addition in my opinion. The introduction of the Weapon Master training is a step in the right direction. Once again, it is not perfect and definitely needs to see some more balance, but I think the biggest point here is that up until now, there was always an argument to be made that elite spec weapons should be stronger because elite specs are supposed to be better than core specs. So most of the time, these weapons outdid their core counterparts. Now that we have all the weapons available, this is not the case anymore, meaning that with continued balance, we will hopefully reach a point where the weapons will be on par with their counterpart options. Obviously, this depends on balance, which has been an iffy subject over the last couple of years, more so than ever before. One class that probably got most utility out of this is the Revenant. Having another long-range option finally, that being the short bow, is really nice. The Greatsword also feels very good, but I will say that I have not played around enough on different classes with new weapon combinations, and my knowledge of the different numbers and what works best is pretty terrible. I just think that once again, it is nice to have a system added that can now be molded to what it needs to be for the betterment of the game. The Relic system. Oh boy. This one again is nice to have as an addition, but probably needs to see the most updates. First off, many rune sets without the added 6th bonus, which was taken away for the relics, have now seen random 6 stat bonuses, a ton of which do not make any sense. The only reason they seem to have been added is to not create duplicate rune sets. It's really sloppily done and needs to be looked at ASAP. Seeing things like toughness or vitality slapped onto damage dealing runes is just simply bad and makes no sense in the way that balance and build crafting currently works in Guild Wars 2. Perhaps this would have been a decent choice 11 years ago, but we play a much different game now compared to back then. Also, the actual relics feel a little odd. Many throwaway effects, meaning that there will probably only be about 4 or 5 of them which will see constant use, and the actual implementation is once again jarringly bad. The descriptions are incredibly lackluster and do not even give enough details to know what to do with the relic. Like, some relics inflict conditions. That's all the info we get. What conditions are applied? How many stacks? For how long? The descriptions for all of the relics need to be expanded upon and brought up to regular equipment standards of Guild Wars 2. Once again, a system that I liked getting added, but needs to see a lot of work done before I would consider it to be really good. Lastly, the Skyscale Masteries. I actually enjoy these a lot. I think they added a new depth to the flying mechanic of the game. Being able to mount mid-combat is great to escape some annoying encounters in the open world. The leyline riding and the updraft usage feels supernatural, and I'm glad these were added. Overall, I'm pretty happy with this system. So as you can see, many of the systems are great additions, but most of them feel like a first draft on a test server and seem really rushed. These need to see a lot of expansion, and my hope is that these will be much better by the time Secrets of the Obscure has fully released. What improvements would you like to see? Now, what about rewards? I think ArenaNet did not do a very good job here. For achievements and collections, the rewards are great. We get some cool unique weapon skins and mastery points and decent amounts of achievement points, as well as deep lore and background to certain characters, strengthening the lore and world building aspect of the expansion. I also find the things we can acquire in the vault pretty neat, as I stated earlier. Unfortunately, the Rift rewards are lackluster. They give essences, yes, but those are only good to make more motivations to get more essences. Those are then used to purchase the Astral Ward armor, which is incredibly expensive. I mean, I understand that this is supposed to be the precursor to the legendary armor, but we only got 2 armor sets this time around, one of which is unlocked just by playing the story. It seems odd because throughout the maps, we have not only the Shrine Guardian boxes return, but we now have minor and greater arcane chests, which all hold the returning unusual coins. Nothing wrong with that, but the only thing that we can get with the unusual coins are recipes for weapons that can drop throughout the expansion. So the recipes don't do much since we can get the skins unlocked by just playing regularly. There doesn't seem to be much of a point for unusual coins. In End of Dragons, we were able to purchase armor sets as well as weapon skins. Now, my idea was that since we got a medium weight looking armor set in the Rift armor and a lightweight looking armor set in the Astral Ward armor, I think it would have been nice to get a heavyweight looking armor set that was purchasable through unusual coins. I know some people were a little upset that the armor didn't look different on each weight class, but I actually appreciate that. This way I can have a light looking armor on my heavy armor wearing warrior, for example. Or I can wear a medium-looking ranger-esque armor on my sword-wielding elementalist. It adds a lot of variety to the different weight classes. But as I mentioned earlier, I think we're missing a heavy set as well as an actual sink for the unusual coins. Currently they feel very superfluous and the chests feel very unrewarding to even open. Then there is the reward for the metas. I'm unsure if there is a unique drop you can get from those, but as far as I could tell, there isn't anything great you can get from completing the meta events. Certainly, there's a decent amount of map currency in there, and the metas are also one of the simpler ways to get this map currency, but not having unique weapons, infusions, or combat tonics dropping from the meta events is a huge loss in my opinion. Also, getting 17 different bouncy chests that I cannot right-click to get rid of during the Omnitas meta needs to seriously stop. Not sure who thought that was a good idea, but it's a major turnoff for me in terms of doing the meta event. Overall, I think the rewards aren't bad per se, but I worry that what we currently have won't keep the hardcore player base busy for 3 months. For the casual players, which are the majority of the player base though, I think there's plenty to work toward, like unlocking your Skyscale and things like that. Hopefully further down the road we will get more things to sink essences and unusual coins into, as well as cool additions to the vault. So in conclusion, I think Secrets of the Obscure did an amazing job in terms of introducing a new line of characters, deepening of the existing lore, using said lore to build on new and interesting things to come, and just building on the world of Guild Wars in general. I think a lot of people, including myself, are very excited to see where the story is going and what Map 3 has in store for us in terms of story and character development. The new maps and the systems that were added seem like great groundwork to build upon. Now, I have seen a lot of people talk about their worry that ArenaNet will be releasing annual expansions. In their mind, I guess they think that with having all these faulty systems released, ArenaNet will look toward the future even faster than before, leaving these buggy maps and features behind. Let me try to put a positive twist on that thought. So now that we do not jump into the living world immediately after an expansion releases, ArenaNet can take their time over these next 9 months to really improve on the systems that they have added. Before, when an expansion came out, ArenaNet would jump right into the next living world season. I know that the season that was released after an expansion were usually somewhat tied to the expansion itself, but most of the time the living world introduced new systems and mechanics that were isolated to that living world, like Unbound and Volatile Magic, for example. I think now that we're simply focusing on Secrets of the Obscure and not Secrets of the Obscure Living World Episode 1, ArenaNet will bug fix and strengthen the systems that they have added and deepen the interactions as well as rewards that we, the player, get out of them. At least this is my hope. We all know that they're working on an expansion for next year, but this new expansion could potentially come out around the holidays of next year. That would give them a year and a half to not only work on that expansion, but this current one that we have. It feels to me like ArenaNet wanted to add as many cool systems as possible, even if they weren't fully fleshed out yet, and just fix them as time goes on. Do I think that this was a good idea? Not necessarily, but it is my hope that they will take this time in the Secrets of the Obscure lifetime to improve all those things. In 9 months, I would like to be able to say that with all the improvements that have been added, this release is the best that ArenaNet has given us in a long time, which is certainly a possibility if the aforementioned fixes are coming. Do you guys agree with the sentiment, or am I just taking too much hopium? I know a lot of these points seem like I'm very disappointed with the expansion, but as a content creator, I feel like I have to look around to see how everyone else feels about it as well. And as some of you guys know, I try to take the middle of the road with most issues. I want to try to understand where the developers come from, but at the same time, I also understand how the player base feels. I do not try to be overly negative, and most of my criticisms are usually done in a constructive manner, but from my personal standpoint, I would say I love the expansion. Simply because I care so much about the lore and story, and I play to immerse myself and find out more about the world of Guild Wars. Secrets of the Obscure did wonders in that regard, which is fantastic, but I do know that for the longevity of the game, the problems that have been pointed out need to be looked at and fixed sooner rather than later. But I think at this point, I'm just talking in circles. So I hope you guys enjoyed this look into what I think about Secrets of the Obscure so far. If you're new to the channel, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button, which would help me out immensely, since I want to grow the channel even more. Also, come check out my streams sometimes. I usually stream on Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday here on YouTube, so make sure to hit that bell icon as well to get notified when I do go live. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all later. Bye guys!